What up, you marks? We are officially live. I am your host, Jake the Villain. Alongside me, we got King Ducey, CL Kid, and joining us, a special guest. He is the masterpiece, the master of the master lock, Chris Masters, ladies and gentlemen.
Cheers, everybody. What's going on?
What's up, man? Hey, tell us what's been going on. What have you been up to these days?
What's been going on? Geez, what hasn't been going on? Let's see. We've had a global pandemic, 3 months of quarantine, social unrest, and a couple, Shad, a good buddy of mine on a serious note, passing. I mean, it's been an eventful last few months. And of course, this would apply much to the show. I mean, we've had no wrestling shows. I mean, in terms of, obviously, we've had the empty arena Raws and AEWs, but I mean, there's no indie wrestling to speak of, which pretty much leaves me jobless. So, yeah, it's been rough, man. Just trying to, get through this whole thing and, navigate it and, hopefully everything's starting to open up again. So that has me a bit optimistic. And my question is just, hopefully soon we'll be able to have, I don't think we're going to have 10,000 people gatherings anytime soon, but maybe we can have a couple hundred, 200 or 300, maybe some independent wrestling will come back and I won't just have to sit at home for all this time.
I hope so, man. Well, you got a smile on your face, dude. And that's good to see, especially during these times, like you said. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious. What do you think of the shows without the audience? And now they're starting to do the minor leagues are in the audience or the trainers are in the audience. What do you think of all that?
Well, first of all, I love this about it. I love the fact that AEW put the people out there before WWE did, and then WWE realized how much better it was and basically stole that idea from this brand new company, that's only been around about a year or whatever. So, but I appreciate the fact that they're still doing it. They're still providing entertainment for all the wrestling fans and, people who watch it. But I will say this personally, I feel like when I watch wrestling without a crowd, I feel like wrestling kind of needs an audience to validate it sometimes, because when you watch wrestling without an audience, some of the stuff can look a little ridiculous, and the thing is the stuff in pro wrestling that looks ridiculous is kind of validated when you have 10, 20,000 people all cheering for it. So, you know what I mean? When you're watching at home, it doesn't look as ridiculous because you have all these people buying into it. You have this loud audience. But, and it lacks a certain amount of energy. I can only imagine how it feels for the performers. Like I felt a little bad for Drew McIntyre, for him to have his WrestleMania moment in an empty building like that and stuff like that. Like as a performer, that's the thing that, kind of pops into my head is, we really depend on the adrenaline rush of the audience to carry us to, those heights, to, the emotion and all that. So, it's got to really feel like work for a lot of these guys to perform without an audience. You know what I mean? Everything hurts a little more is what I'm saying. And it kind of reminds me of when I was in Ohio Valley Wrestling and we would do practice, we do practices and practice matches in front of nobody except our peers. And, that's just difficult because you don't have that, you're not as fired up for that. You don't have the adrenaline. It's just, you know what I'm saying? You don't have all those elements to it. So I don't like it. That's a long way of saying I don't like it so much, but I understand them going on with the show and doing it and providing entertainment for all of us.
Absolutely. So I'm just kind of curious, like if let's say you were, they were booking you to wrestle, what would you do to get yourself in the mindset? Because I know you're talking about how, it's hard without the fans there. What did you do back in the day at, Ohio Valley Wrestling, like to get yourself in that mindset of like, picturing that you're live?
Well, it's still the pressure of having to do a job and like go out there and perform that job and do it good. So like, all these guys are still having to go out there. They're shooting for television. They still know that Vince McMahon is back there in the gorilla position and everybody else. So, I mean, you still have all those added incentives to go out there and perform the job the best way possible. But I mean, that's the thing. I'm sure for all these guys, I mean, it feels a lot more like a job than it did before when you were performing in front of, that many people.
For sure, for sure. All right.
I'd probably listen. You know, I definitely have some headphones in before, and I'd be blasting whatever my favorite music is to try to get me hyped up for sure. I'll say that.
So like some ABBA or something like that.
Some Enya. How about that?
Nice.
Terrible.
That's super pump up music right there. All right. Well, Chris, we have a few segments that we normally do on this show where we kind of have topics and we go through some things. One of our segments is known as Burn It Down. And basically we just go through like the hot topics that we feel are hot topics of wrestling, give our insight, and go through it. So
sure.
I'm just
going to turn the fan on here.
Yeah. Get comfortable. So, you know, it sounds like you're keeping up with a lot of programs. So I'm curious, have you seen the Bayley and Sasha storyline? They're now the women's tag champs. Bayley's also women's champ. What do you think of that and kind of the division at this point now that Becky Lynch is gone on leave?
Well, you know, I follow it just enough. I mean, I won't say that I have a necessarily great opinion on this. Bayley is a great performer. She comes out of California here too, and I think so. You're saying that she's a tag team champion with Sasha now? Is that it?
Yeah, and the champion. So she's I think they're calling her Bayley Dose Straps. So instead of Becky Two Belts, yeah.
I don't mind that as much as I mind Tessa Blanchard holding the Impact Wrestling World Championship. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was kind of a bridge too far, and I know Impact Wrestling is kind of trying. You know, I mean, not a lot of people pay attention to Impact Wrestling now, not as much as AEW and WWE. And they're at least, they're always on the cutting edge of trying, you know, whatever the most different thing is that's going on in the business. And they went so far as to make, you know, Tessa the world champion. So I'm not really for that, just because in my mind, you know, you still can't have these you can have these intergender matches, but only to a certain extent, because like, if you have a guy like me, or even like, you know, I've seen Brian Cage do these a few times. If you have a dude in there with a girl and he punches her, clotheslines her, I mean, it should be over. You know what I mean? It's just, and that's not me being sexist or anything like that. It's just how it is. Like, men most typically are much bigger, stronger, athletic human beings. And so to put a woman against the guy I have a problem with, I don't think I really have a problem with Bayley being the women's champion and a tag team champion. I mean, you know, it kind of goes along with the theme. We just came off that Me Too movement, and they're really just trying to push and invest in these women a lot more than they ever have. The timing on the Becky Lynch pregnancy obviously isn't the best timing for her run. I'm not going to go off like Jim Cornette did and, you know, go off on the whole thing for about 10 minutes. But, I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? If her and Seth, you know, she got pregnant and, you know, she wants to have the kid, that's fine. You know, hopefully she can come back and regain the momentum that she had over the last couple of years. Because, I mean, that's the only thing. She was just hitting such a stride. I mean, look how over she got. She got over to the point where I think they were the main event of WrestleMania, right? Were they the last match?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing, right? Like, we all four of us, we could have never imagined probably growing up watching wrestling. I'm assuming all you guys kind of probably grew up on wrestling too. I mean, we would have never imagined that women would finish or close a show. I mean, even when, you know, we had like Trish Stratus, who, like, that whole crop of girls were good workers, but you still never kind of imagined Trish Stratus or any of them closing the show, right? So, you know, it's kind of unfortunate for Becky Lynch's momentum, but I mean, you know, what are you going to say? If somebody wants to bring a life into this world, I mean, it's really hard to, like, you know, kind of dig at that, you know, like, it's a no-win situation.
No, you make some good points there, Chris. And a lot of it, you know, when we're looking at Bayley having two belts, it's kind of filling that void of Becky having she had the two main championships.
Yeah.
And when you talk about, like, Tessa having the Impact Wrestling, I pay attention to that one just because I'm a huge Jordan Grace fan, and I'm so glad that she's a women's champion because she puts in so much work, and I'm really happy to see what she does. But with Tessa, you're right. I mean, one good clothesline from a guy like Brian Cage, I mean, she could take that bump wrong. That shoulder's gone.
Yeah.
But with Bayley, I think that they're trying to throw it too much into her face to try to make up that gap for, you know, Becky Lynch being gone, because she was the hottest thing WWE had going for it in the women's division. And, you know, because she could be a heel, she could be a face, and people love her for no matter what.
Impact Wrestling just has no idea what they're doing. Like,
Right.
and I know you used to work for that organization, but I mean, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Cody Rhodes, they're all stars now. And they were in Impact Wrestling, and they seem like they just can't get their writing right.
No, they can't. They can't hang on to anybody is the thing. You know what I mean? Like Impact Wrestling is really, to me, is like it's a place where like you go there and like every person you just mentioned went there and they have like a run that lasts about a year or something like that. And after that year, you kind of already done everything there is to do in Impact Wrestling. So it like money aside and all that, I mean, it's just the logical next step is to move on. But I will say this, like Impact Wrestling is a great platform for a lot of guys who like are coming up and just they want to like try stuff. You know what I mean? Like look at Kevin Cross. You know what I mean? For Kevin Cross, it's beautiful that he's in WWE now, but like Impact Wrestling for where he was a year ago was a great place. It was a place for him to go up and develop a name for himself. It was a place. It's also a place for you to try stuff out. Where like, you know, like in WWE, once you get there, it's kind of sink or swim, or the bigger companies. In Impact Wrestling, you can try some stuff out and you can see what works for you, what doesn't. And then like by the time you leave there, if you sign with one of the other companies, you can kind of have a little bit of a fresh start, or you can take whatever it is that was going well in Impact Wrestling and now apply it to WWE or AEW. So, I mean, I do feel like it has its place in wrestling. I don't, to go kind of echo what you're saying, I just don't feel like it's a place for somebody to legitimately stay for an extended period of time, you know, unless you're Eddie Edwards, I guess. Eddie's got a good deal there. Eddie's my boy, though. He's got a good deal. They take care of him there. So I'm not taking any shots at Eddie.
Yeah, and you were paired with one of my favorite wrestlers, Eli Drake, for a while over there. I was a big Eli Drake fan. I actually watched him back when he was on the Heroes show back in the day. But I just felt like when you showed up, I was super pumped, and I was so excited to see how they booked you. And it just, you know, personally as a fan, I felt like they really missed the mark they could have really advertised you well. You know, I know you, Chris Adonis there, and, you know, I'm just curious to hear your perspective. If I'm way off, call me out. But if you know, how did you feel about your time there?
Well, I agree with you on this. I felt like when I came into Impact Wrestling, it was kind of like they didn't care that I was, you know, a wrestler from World Wrestling Entertainment who had, you know, just through being with that company, had a bigger name than a lot of the talent that they all had. You know what I mean? Like I was much more well-known globally. Like even still to this day, if you say like with an Eli Drake or somebody like that, like I'm more well-known, but it's only because of the fact that I had a WWE run. I'm not trying to say that that's because I'm more talented or anything like that, but
you are.
you know, but no, but I did. This is the thing. I did like, so that thing with Eli that I was doing. I didn't necessarily have a problem with that because I kind of almost looked at it like I could be the Hunter to Eli Shawn Michaels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm there to build up Eli. I'm there to say that, you know, he's the showstopper. He's the main event. He's the icon. But I was looking, when we came out of that, I was looking at like, okay, well, if I'm going to play this role for Eli, then coming out of this, we have to have some kind of issue with each other. We got to have a program. We got to have me. Yeah, you know, you've seen Eli's work. Eli was kind of transitioning into a fan favorite anyway. So, like, the thing is I didn't stay to see that through because I didn't know if that was going to happen anyway. You know what I mean? And I wasn't really happy with what I was being paid. But in my mind, I was just kind of thinking like, okay, they want me to play this role for Eli, but I just need to make sure, and this is granted if I ended up staying longer because I just ended up leaving. I was like, coming out of this, we need to have something where there's a payoff to this, where I can now backstab Eli. Eli turns babyface. We have a program, and, you know, now we go our separate ways. And then all that time of me being basically his cheerleader would have at least been kind of building towards something. Because the thing is for me was if they don't have something coming out of that for me, it does nothing for me. You know what I mean? It doesn't increase my stock as far as getting booked in the independent world, because that was a big thing to me. It's like, if I'm going to Impact Wrestling, I either need to be making money that I'm happy with, or I need to be doing something like have that platform to create some relevance for myself, like be on TV again, so you guys can all see me and you can be like, oh, you know, Masters or Adonis was on last week and he had a great match on television. And, you know, and that way it's creating relevance for me, and it's also, you know, possibly getting me booked on various independent wrestling, you know, organizations.
Right. Is Kevin Cross Karrion Cross? Is that his name now?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we'll get into that later. I got so much to say about that shit.
Speaking of other indie wrestlers, I think you tangled it up with Orange Cassidy at some point, and he seems to be gaining some momentum now. So I'm curious, like, what do you think of the gimmick? Like, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? I'll say this. You know, I'm a little old school from certain standpoints. Like, it's hard for me to see like some of these as, you know, what do they call them? Outlaw wrestling and like the hands in the pockets and all that. But I'm going to say this. I wrestled Orange Cassidy just a few months ago, like you were alluding to, over at, where was it? It was bar wrestling. And I wasn't really familiar with Orange Cassidy. I'd only seen like pictures of him on Instagram. I knew he was the guy who had his hands in his pockets and wore the shades and the jacket. But I'll say this. Yeah, I'll say this. I made my entrance at bar wrestling. And so I made the first entrance, and then his music hit. And I swear to God, it felt like a Stone Cold Steve Austin pop. The crowd went so crazy for him. And then I will tell you this. We proceeded to have the best easy match I've ever had in my career. So obviously he made a fan out of me. I still won't say I completely get, like, I don't, as far as the gimmick long term, I don't know how you can grow with the gimmick of with your hands in your pockets, but I mean, he's getting over, and he was over out here. I mean, again, the crowd went absolutely insane for him. And for me, you know, with pro wrestling, sometimes you have to throw logic out the window because, I mean, there's certain things that just get over with the audience, and this is a show and a performance more than anything else. So, I mean, I know a lot of the old schoolers, they'll get on Joey Ryan about the dick gimmick. They'll get on Cassidy about the hands in his pockets. But, I mean, man, you know, if the crowd is getting that much behind it, like, I don't know. I'm just the type where you got to kind of give certain things a little leeway. Yeah, maybe they don't make sense, but whatever. The crowd loves it. And, you know, we're at a point in time where this isn't like the 80s and 90s. I think people really are smarter to the fact that, hey, this is not, you know, this isn't a shoot wrestling match. You know what I mean? This is a performance. So you kind of have to evolve with that and realize that, hey, you know, stuff works to entertain people. You know, I don't want to shit on anybody's parade. You know what I mean? If Joey Ryan's dick flip gimmick is getting him booked all over the world and keeping him busy all the time, and like the crowds still enjoy it, like, who am I to bash it? You know what I mean? Or who am I to say, even if I was wrestling him, if I had to wrestle him, I would do it just because that's his thing and the crowd loves it. Now, if the crowd didn't pop for it, or they were sick of it or something like that, then I would have an issue with it.
So would you say that Orange Cassidy's super kicks are more powerful than Shawn Michaels?
Oh, no, we can't say that. Let's not go that far. Jeez. Oh, boy.
Hey. So as far as gimmicks go, from one to the next, what do you think of the Seth Rollins Messiah gimmick that he's got currently going on? I don't know if you've kept up with Raw lately with Seth Rollins and how he's doing that, but what do you think of that? It is more of a traditional old school wrestling style thing. Do you think you like that, the longevity of that, or are you against it?
Well, I'm going to preface this with, again, the fact that I think you guys think I probably watch it a lot more than I do. Now, the most wrestling I get to see is through social media and YouTube and the various shows. So, like, I haven't sat down to watch a Raw or a SmackDown in whole in years. But the best that I can tell from it was Seth we were talking about?
Yeah.
Rollins. I mean, it looks to me like it just looks like he's gone a little douchier. You know what I mean? He's working heel. He's wearing the jacket. He's got the bun, and it's like you can just tell, like, without even watching him perform, you can tell by looking at the pictures and stuff. You can tell, like, oh, he's going for a douchier heel gimmick. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not really familiar with Seth Rollins' whole character arc. I think you guys would know that better than me in terms of if it's good or not. I can tell from the feedback from most of the fans, it seems like a lot of fans are kind of annoyed by the gimmick, but I mean, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I'd like to hear you guys' feedback on it.
I'm obsessed. I'm not gonna lie. I'm obsessed.
Yeah,
I'm a Rollins fan, so I'm a little biased because I do think he's an incredible in-ring performer. I'm a sucker for in-ring performers. I think you're remarkable, especially on the indie circuit. And so, you know,
well, you gotta love Shawn Michaels then. You gotta love Shawn Michaels,
oh yeah, we're
right?
big HBK fans, absolutely.
Oh yeah, I'm with you guys. For me, I don't mean to. I want you to carry on, but I just want to say that for me, the in-ring performance was always a huge thing. Like I grew up a fan of Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect. Granted, the Ultimate Warrior got me watching wrestling, but we kind of know the story with him. He was in and out, in and out. So like after one of his departures, I just started really admiring Shawn and Bret for their in-ring work. I was like, oh wow, these guys go out there and they put on these performances that are, you know, they're just different. They're athletic, and so I've kind of grown up kind of with the same. If you guys are on that same page, you know what I mean, which it sounds like, it's just like that's what I live for.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big in-ring performer guy, but I will say if you can cut a promo too, then I'm hooked. And I think Seth Rollins is fantastic on the mic, and I'm a sucker for like a really innovative gimmick too, like the Fiend, Bray Wyatt stuff, and I think it's really cool that they're doing like the cult thing, but they're doing it in a way that's actually like, I believe he's a cult leader, the way his mannerisms are, the way he talks. Like I suspend my disbelief when Seth Rollins is on there, unlike Brody Lee in the Dark Order on AEW. I can't suspend my disbelief for that. I can't get behind it. I think Brody Lee's awesome, but I just don't think that's the right gimmick for him. And so I don't know. CL Kid, what do you think of Seth Rollins?
Oh no, I love him. I'm the same way. Seth Rollins for me is like today's Shawn Michaels in the ring. When it comes to this in-ring matches, you always know that it has the opportunity going into the match to be a 10. There's a lot of guys that, like, I'm not saying that I know Doozy over here is giving me the, it's like, you know, sin to compare someone to Shawn Michaels. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, there's very few guys currently that just knowing they're going to be in a match has a potential for a 10 match. So many guys, like, I already know, like, what the ceiling will be for that night or for that card or for their opponent, whatever. Rollins always offers a potential 10. And so I love him. And I think, you know, I love the gimmick, like Jacob here was saying. Doozy over there is shaking his head and getting ready to say
Let's
whatever.
hear it, King.
So I'm going to let him – I'll defer to Doozy. And I love Shawn Michaels. Like you said, Bret Hart, Razor Ramon got me into wrestling. Shawn Michaels showed me the way.
Before he goes, he bolded the down arrow, like with a Sharpie, the marker on that down arrow there.
Let's hear it.
First of all, I like Seth Rollins. I do. I like Seth Rollins when he was with the Shield. I liked him as Tyler Black when he was, you know, in ROH. I hate the Monday Night Messiah stuff. I don't like when they talk about like, oh, he's God and this stuff. I never liked that stuff in my wrestling. I don't need religion being brought into my wrestling. Plus, they're taking away from Buddy Murphy. Buddy Murphy is an incredible talent by himself. And having him do Seth Rollins' dirty work for him, like, come on. Like, oh, hold him down. Man, fuck you. You do it yourself, bitch. Sorry, my language. I'm ready for this stuff to end. I'm ready. I thought Drew McIntyre was going to end it. I was like, come on. But so far, nothing. I do not like it personally. I don't like he's coming out there looking like a hitman, like he does something. But no, he's got his little cronies doing it. So,
well, let me ask you this. So you're saying you like him better as a babyface? Is that your argument?
No. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I like him. I can only like Seth Rollins as a heel. The same with Kevin Owens. I can only like them as heels. Because when Kevin Owens is doing his babyface gimmick, I can't get hooked. I can't listen to him on the mic. But when Kevin Owens is Kevin Owens by himself, even when he had Triple H backing him up, I was for that. I enjoyed that stuff. Yeah. But now he's out there by himself and, you know, being the cult leader that he is I can't get hooked into that. It's not I don't know.
What's he saying, Chris, is that he has no point.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Because a lot of what I was hearing Villain and Kid here say, it sounds to me like what I hear about AJ Styles, actually more so nowadays, that AJ Styles is like the in-ring performer. Oh, am I wrong? I'm asking.
No. Go ahead.
And here's my other question. Have we seen Seth and AJ, have they had any legitimate programs with each other or good, like barn burner matches?
They had a match at a pay-per-view, but I think it was it wasn't like a grand thing. It
Yeah,
didn't
it
build
wasn't anything
build
special.
that well. But yeah, AJ
No.
Styles he's unreal. He's
Yeah.
incredible.
Like
Sure.
we were talking last week, how excited we are for AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. You know, because those guys in-ring performance-wise, that's going to be a top-tier type of match. You know, those guys off the ropes.
Chris, I don't know if you're up with that, but they actually tomorrow night on SmackDown they're fighting for the vacant Intercontinental title. AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan.
Former Impact guy.
That's going to be a treat.
Styles.
Yeah, something. So I mean, unless they do some kind of, they have Backlash coming up this Sunday, so they may do some interference thing to push it till then. But you know what I mean, like.
So speaking of great,
sorry,
you go for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna take this one.
Go ahead.
Speaking of Backlash this week, there's something going around called the greatest match ever, and it's going to be Edge versus Orton. Now, before I get into all this stuff, I know the greatest match ever, and that's Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12. I don't know who agrees with me, but that's to me the greatest match ever.
Yeah.
So when you look at Edge versus Orton, this is stemming off the WrestleMania, stemming off Royal Rumble, Edge coming back. And, we've seen these guys connect together, work together, hate each other, come back together. Where do you feel, as a whole, this being billed as the greatest match ever?
Well, I don't like it personally. I mean, just because, that's a lot of pressure to put on one match, first of all. And the other thing is, I guess I understand maybe they're trying to, they obviously are trying to create interest by calling it this, because a lot of people like us probably right away just kind of took offense to it. Like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Like right. as much as Randy and Edge are good, it's like in our minds, we're like, there's no way they could possibly have the greatest match ever. By the way, King, I do agree with you, and we might be in the minority on this, but WrestleMania 12, Shawn and Bret, to me, is the greatest match of all time. A lot of that, it just is based on where I was at in my fanhood, like getting to see Shawn elevate to finally reach the world title status. But I'll also say that, it's probably 1A, and then 1B would probably be that first Taker match, because that one was really unbelievable, you know what I mean? And, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to even say. It's just one of the greatest WrestleMania matches I've ever seen.
It's the boyhood dream come true, man.
Yeah, you just two of my top 5 are those two matches you just said.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So speaking of great wrestling matches, Chris, what is this is actually a two-part question. It comes from our life group, Simon Williams, one of our wrestling life group people. What is the match you would like to be most remembered for, is the first question. The second question is, what is the match that you think you'll be remembered for?
Ooh, man, I think the answer, it is probably going to be the same on both, because most people still reach out to me on this, and it's going along with our theme anyway. It's the Shawn Michaels Unforgiven match, and it's mainly just because, that'll probably be a sleeper match for a lot of people who don't remember it. But at the same time, I still get people to this day who will every once in a while be like, oh, yeah, by the way, that match you had with Shawn and Unforgiven was off the chain, or we loved it, or whatever. And, for me, it was the most sentimental one because of everything we've already talked about. Like, I grew up idolizing the guy. And, it was a lot of pressure, because I remember when I was working the program with him, all I kept thinking to myself was like, don't be the first guy in wrestling history to have a bad match with Shawn Michaels on a pay-per-view. And I just thought so much of him too. I didn't want to, I wanted his experience to be good with me and vice versa. So I always look back at that as such a fond memory, because for me, and again, since we're talking, we're all kind of going to the fact that we're marks on this, the inner mark in me really just wanted that. To me, that was like winning the world championship. You know what I mean? Like, you could have either told me I was winning the world title, or you could have told me I was wrestling Shawn Michaels on pay-per-view, and they would have had like the same value to me, probably. You know what I mean? Just because, I never would have thought, even if you would have came to me and, when he came back in 2002 and he wrestled Triple H in that return match at SummerSlam, I remember watching that. And that was only about 3 years before I worked him, and I was still just such a mark, and I was so excited that he was coming back. You could have never have told me when I was sitting there that day, hey, you're going to be wrestling him in about 3 years. It would have blown my mind. I would have been there's no way I could have comprehended it. So just the fact that that was able to happen, and working a lot of those guys, working with Triple H, with Ric Flair, like the amount of house show matches I had with all those guys were just, I mean, what an amazing experience, man. Like, I'll just say some of the tag team matches with those guys were the greatest learning tool you could ever have in wrestling. Just watching them from the apron and seeing how calm they are when they go about to the match, how calm they are when they're calling stuff out to each other, how smooth they are, how much fun they would have in those situations. It was just, I'll take that stuff with me for the rest of my life.
How old were you when you were in that match? If you remember.
21 years old.
Wow.
Can you believe that? Like, imagine, I got to assume you came out first and just standing in the ring and the sexy boy theme comes on.
Oh, my God, bro.
I've been trying.
I mean, that's a pop right there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, I wrestled. You guys only saw what you saw on TV, but I think, as you guys know, there's house shows, like 3 house shows a week. So I wrestled Sean all over the world. And, like, I'm telling you, man, I would make entrances. We would be like, I remember in Australia, I think it was Sydney, Australia, you know what I mean? Like, the crowds are so loud there. And I would make my entrance. I would just be there, and there'd be that moment in between my music and his. And then his music would hit. And, like, the theme music, the crowd would go so crazy. Like, I would have goosebumps, and I would actually turn into a wrestling fan again for a few seconds. And then I would have, like, halfway down the aisle, I would have to, like, psych myself out to, like, remember, like, hey, I got to perform with this guy. I got to hang with this guy. I got to get over the fact that I'm a mark for him and how much I think of him, and I got to perform right now. So it'd always be this kind of battle between, the Mark version of me and now the guy who's actually in this line of work and having to, go out there and do it.
That's
so
awesome.
What do you think the outcome will be of this Edge versus Orton match? Where are you leaning towards?
I think they'll have, the greatest match of all time. I don't see that, obviously. I mean, Randy is a great performer, but it's hard to, like, when it comes to greatest matches of all time, I don't even know, it'd be hard to, I don't even know where you would put Randy in his matches. Like, you'd have to go through the history of his matches and see where his best matches would rank. He's a great performer. I think when we come out of this, what's going to happen is, I think they'll have had a good match, but I think everybody's going to be like, as far as greatest match ever, no. It's going to fall down the list quite a bit. I mean, they have so much working against them already. To not have a crowd and make this claim, this kind of, you know what I mean? It's all this title. I think everybody has to kind of get over it. I mean, it's not going to be the greatest match of all time, but it'll be a good match. And really, all they're trying to do is get everybody, like all of us, to talk about this and be like, again, greatest match of all. And it creates some curiosity. It's like, what are they going to do to try to make this the great? Like, like, how much is each performer going to put? Because, I know personally, if I had that label, that title going into a match, you're going to feel a lot of pressure, and you're going to do some stuff that you wouldn't normally do, right? So, it's definitely going to create interest. And I think at the end of the day, it'll still have been a hell of a match. It'll be good because those two guys take a lot of pride in what they do. So they're going to go out there and they're going to do the best they can. They're going to put it all out there. But, I just think at the end of the day, it'll be a good match, but, not the greatest match.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point where, like, sometimes the buildup to a match is so much that there's no way you can deliver. Like, there's been a few times that I've seen that happen. I think one really good one was Punk and Cena back when Punk, broke the fourth wall. I think their match actually delivered after all the time they took in promoting it. But, something like this, I don't see them living up to it. I thought the match they did at Mania was good, but it was only good because they used the environment and it was Edge's match back, where I think if that was in the ring with no fans, like you're saying, it's not going to, there's no way it can translate. One of the things as a fan, as a Mark, that I love doing is when there's the holy shit moment and you're chanting along with the fans, that's part of it to me. That's exciting to do. And, I can't get behind two guys behind, a hockey glass going, holy shit, over a match that's happening now.
Well, I just want to bring up one thing now that you said that too, is, one thing this break has showed us is how important wrestling fans are. Because I mentioned all the stuff for the performers, but from a viewing audience, man, you can see how much now the wrestling fans are a part of the show. Like, you guys, all the fans, you guys are the chants, the pops, the boos, like all of that stuff is like a huge part of the match. I think it's an even bigger part of the match than most people would have thought. You know what I mean? So like really, I know that wrestling fans like to be a part of the show. Like that's a big thing at a lot of the indie shows and stuff. Some of these indie shows are just as much about the crowd as they are the performers. You know what I mean? So you're really seeing a lot of that now, and that's just why, like, you know, again for Randy and Edge, this is going to be it's just such an uphill battle, just because of the fact that, you know, like to even try to have that match without 20,000 people, and you've just lost the big chunk of the whole match. You know what I mean? Because again, it's Randy, it's Edge, it's the referee, and then there's a percentage of that is just audience participation, and we're not going to get that. So, you know, they're kind of behind the 8 ball no matter what.
So speaking about being behind the 8 ball, I just got to ask you one quick question here. I know some people talk about other wrestlers and stuff, but would you agree that CM Punk isn't the best in the world? Come on.
Best in the world? You know, I think it's a good tagline, and he's a tremendous performer. I mean, like, look what he did. I mean, he really kind of created a new culture around pro wrestling. He kind of bridged the gap between Vince McMahon's WWE and like the independent world a little bit. And now look what's happened. You know, you've had, since CM Punk, you've had Daniel Bryan, you've had like a lot of guys have success that you never thought that would in WWE. But I mean, I can't say CM Punk is the best in the world. I think he's a hell of a performer. I appreciate the way he was able to kind of, you know, say whatever he wants. I appreciate the way he kind of gave me props after I got released and pointed out, which was a shoot. Yep. You know, he had told me for a while, he'd been like, you know, Masters, you've gotten, he would always point it out to me like, dude, you've gotten a lot better. And he would acknowledge it. And that meant a lot to me because, you know, I was painted out as a body guy for so long that it meant so much to me, even if I wasn't being used, to show kind of fans like you that, hey, I appreciate good in-ring workers too, and I'm going to do my best to become one of those guys, even if they're not pushing me. You know, even if they had me on Superstars, I'm going to go out here and try to perfect my craft and be a good storyteller.
I have a question. Since you brought it up, I was going to ask it later, but I actually have a question for you that I thought is a really good point. So when we're watching you on the indie circuit and even your work previously, you're not just a body guy. Like, you do a lot of incredible things in the ring. And so do you think that because you have the physique that you do, that you were, from WWE's perspective, you were limited as far as what your gimmick could be or what your potential could be because you had to fall in line to that, you know, the guy with the body?
Well, no, I think, see, you know, the thing with me is I was in WWE so fast. I wasn't like Seth Rollins and a lot of the guys that you said who had this long career before they got to WWE. You got to remember, for me, I went straight shot. Like, when I started training for wrestling and I got signed 1 year later, and I was already on the road at 20 years old. So like, the problem with me is I didn't really have the time to develop like all those guys did, where I really got to the point, like, I had to learn on the fly. Like, I had to go out there, and like my first couple of years, I was okay. Like, I could work well with a Shawn Michaels or like some of the guys I worked with, guys who were better than me. But like, I couldn't really carry a match with somebody who wasn't as good as me. Not that there was a lot of guys, not, you know, that were lesser than me, but it really just came down to the fact that, you know, towards the end of my career where I got released, I had more time. I had about 5, 6, 7, you know, even more, maybe closer to 10 years under my belt. So you start to learn all the little components that make a good wrestling match, which are like, you know, the selling, you know, having emotional investment. Like, you know, we talked about Sean a lot, the emotion that he would bring to a match. Like, you start learning all those components. Like, so just because in my first couple of years, I could have a good match here or there, I still didn't fully understand, like, oh, how do I, when I'm selling something, how do I really believe it? And how do I convey that to an audience? Like, all that stuff is stuff that you need to develop along with your character and your gimmick. And it takes time, you know what I mean? And like, that's why, you know, it's much more difficult when you're thrusted in there within your first couple of years. You know, for me, looking back, it would have been much better if I would have not rushed into WWE so quick, and I would have had time to work different promotions, work independence, work ROH, work here, work there, and then go to WWE, because then you would have had much more of the finished product. Like, a big problem with me is is I got pushed at the very beginning, right? But, my wrestling was okay. It was okay here and there. But then my wrestling got much better towards the end. So it's like my push and my wrestling ability never kind of lined up with each other. And that was the thing that was unfortunate. You know what I mean? And they weren't really willing to push me towards the end, even though my wrestling had gotten much better, whether it was just me falling out of favor with Vince or they just already booked you to lose so much that, how do you come back from that? You know what I mean? After a certain point, you just have to go away anyway. You got to change your look or change something about yourself or just, get out of everybody's memory essentially. But, I just think those things didn't necessarily line up for me. You know what I mean? If I could go back, I would have probably taken a different path about all of it.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great, man. So we created a little segment here called the Master Lock Challenge. Obviously, you remember your time, WWE, where you're doing. Yeah, there you go. Got the grip down. So basically, we're just going to run through some names and just tell me a memory that you really stood out for you for each of these people that I run through. All right, so some of these you've already kind of discussed, so we'll go more quick through those. But nonetheless, John Cena. What's a cool memory of John Cena that you have?
Oh, man. John Cena was, John Cena and me started training for pro wrestling the same day. I've told this story a bunch of times, but we started training at Ultimate Pro Wrestling over here in California together. And, John was always a hard ass on me. I don't know. We were kind of like oil and water. We never really mixed for I don't know if it's just personality clashes or what it is, but, we were just never very close. I mean, you could put us in a room and after 5 minutes, I think the conversation would run dry. So I don't know what it was about us. You know what I mean? And it seemed like he didn't like me very much. I mean, I don't like to make those assumptions about people, but, maybe I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, we never mixed that well. I mean, I don't dislike him or anything like that. I think John Cena's a hell of a, he is that hardworking dude everybody puts him over to be. He is kind of that he'd never miss a date, and he was real big on the ethics of the crew and all that. So, but I will say this, it was difficult for Cena and me when we were working, especially my first year up there, because Cena would always try to call my offense for me. You know what I mean? Because I think he was thinking that I was incapable of doing it for myself. And I remember Cena would complain about having to work me a lot. And one thing, and you guys might appreciate this, one thing that I always appreciated from Shawn Michaels is, Cena would complain about working with me, and he would kind of insinuate that I was the shits. And then Shawn Michaels would chime in and be like, I didn't have any trouble with him, which you got to understand, for a guy in my position, I appreciate it so much, because, I mean, I wasn't on Cena or Shawn's level. I couldn't really, it wasn't really my place to kind of say anything. But for Shawn Michaels to say that, and again, we know where we kind of put Shawn Michaels in the grand scheme of things. For Shawn to say that meant a lot more to me than anything Cena could say about my work.
Yeah, definitely. Sucks. Odd to have Cena be the one to complain about someone's in-ring thing. Doozy is my Cena, by the way. He thinks I can pay the segments and stuff.
He's everybody's Cena.
Yes. Take back everything nice I said about Chris Masters.
All two things, right? Bobby Lashley.
Oh, my God. You know what's funny about Bobby? A story just popped in my head, but I can't tell it on here. So I got to think of something else.
Oh, no, come on.
Give us a little hint. Give us a little hint.
No, come on, give us something, please.
I can't tell you guys at all. Believe me, I just can't. But, I did the ultimate, like, whatever you would think that would be the ultimate brother move for one of your friends, I did for Bobby Lashley, because I had to for him. But I will say this. People keep asking me about Bobby using the full Nelson. So I will say this, just for the record, for everybody who brings it up, I appreciate all the fans on Twitter and Instagram tagging me and calling out Bobby for using it. But I will say this, I think technically it should be okay for Bobby to use it, especially because he was the first guy to break it. So and not even just to mention that, the way he physically looks. I mean, the guy's a freaking beast. So, I mean, if you're going to recycle that move for anybody, it makes the most sense for Bobby. I mean, it's just like for him to break it and then know the effectiveness of it and then use it with that physique just completely makes sense. Although I would love for them, as much as I've been tagged in these full Nelson Instagram and tweets, it would be I wouldn't be shocked if WWE did try to call me to try to help him get that over somehow, which inevitably would end up with me in the full Nelson, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I feel about that, but it would be nice probably to get a call since it's been so long.
All right, so I'll make sure to tag that little segment on IG for you, my account, our accounts, and get WWE to get you out there just to take full.
Everybody already is, believe me. You should see every Monday I get tagged, and like if you read the comments under the Bobby thing, they're all like master lock. It just it's touching to me because it makes me remember how passionate you guys, and wrestling fans are. And I remember this just from being in the business. We are so passionate about wrestling that we don't really forget stuff. You know what I mean? Like we might not think about it for a while, but wrestling fans remember all this stuff and they're just the most passionate people about it. And like, I remember myself as a wrestling fan, I just remember I wouldn't really forget stuff. I mean, granted, there was a lot less wrestling back then. There was only 2-hour Raw and all that. But I would also just be, as a wrestling fan, I would be excited about every wrestler, not just my favorite wrestler,
No, definitely cool. So next person on the list would have been Shawn Michaels, but, obviously you've covered him. What about Ric Flair?
Oh, man. I just, when I think of Ric Flair, I just think of there was this one loop we were doing of shows where we were going to like Australia and Singapore and somewhere else, maybe somewhere in Thailand. And I had to work Ric Flair on every single night in singles matches. And I don't know what happened the first 2 nights, but like we just had some bad matches the first 2 nights. Like I think my head wasn't in it or something was going on with me where I wasn't performing well. And I just remember Rick was cutting these scathing promos on me in the ring. He was calling me Lex Luger and telling me I was the shits. Yeah, this was while we were in the ring. He was just completely burying me. But the reason I tell this story is actually because it turned out okay, because on the 3rd night we were in Perth, Australia, and we had the biggest house of the 3 nights. It was like a 2 or over a $1 million house. And we went out there, we had the opening match, and I don't know what finally clicked in my head, but I went out there focused, and we finally had a great match on that loop, and he went with me for we were out there for about 24 minutes. We did all the Ric Flair stuff, you know what I mean? Like all his vintage stuff, and it turned out really good. And I remember I was just finally able to kind of redeem myself by the 3rd night, because I mean, I was, you got to imagine it was fucking with my head mentally to have Rick, berating me in these matches and calling, I knew him calling me Lex Luger wasn't a term of endearment or anything. You know what I mean? I knew that. So, it felt really good to come out on the last night on the biggest house of the trip and us have a great match. I felt like I had to have that.
No, yeah, I can definitely understand that. So now what about the apparent 2K champ, Carlito?
Oh, man.
Good guy.
6'8" creative player guy on his team.
Well, I will say this about Carly, and I just came off dominating him in 2K before this very interview. So to the point where the system unexpectedly or unexplainably just shut down out of nowhere, which kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, what happened? There was Wi-Fi difficulty? He said, I don't know.
He pulled the plug.
That's what I think. But what I'll say about Briz, we call him Briz, and like all of his coworkers, all of us in the industry, we call him Briz because that's our kind of carny term for brother, and he's like, the ultimate brother. Him and Luke Gallows. Luke Gallows is the good brother. Carlito's Briz. Briz is the funniest dude. I mean, just traveling. I've been everywhere with that guy. I've probably wrestled him probably like 2,000 times at this point. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but a lot. And he's just the funniest guy. Here's something funny about Carlito that I don't know if everybody knows. So when I'm on the road with him, we have this thing where, not to offend anybody, but just for our own pure enjoyment, we'll pull up to arena and we'll have like the girl who works at the, works the parking garage, and we'll stop and she'll kind of navigate us where to go. She'll be like, okay, you make a left around there and you go park at the loading dock. So we'll be like, okay, thank you. And then as we're driving off, as we're finishing, Carlito will be like, all right, thanks. And then he'll say bro or brother, like something like that under his breath. And it always gets a pop out of all this, because you always have the woman in this case who will do a double take and be like, what? Like, he just called me bro, or like we'll do the same thing with a guy, but he'll call him sweetie or precious or sugar tush. And it's and I again just
sugar tush.
And again, it's never like, okay, bye, sugar tush. It's like always like, okay, bye, and then under his breath, sweetie or sugar tush. And to see the reaction of these people is so priceless. You know what I mean? Because I mean, sometimes they won't even put it over, but there are those few times when they're like, you know what I mean? Like, what just happened? This, or like, you know what I mean? So that kind of stuff just always cracks me up.
Yeah.
Who's cooler, you or Carlito?
Oh, Carlito, definitely. Oh yeah. Carlito.
Has he spit apple in your face ever? Has that happened?
Only about 1 million times, man. And, you got to imagine. I told you how many times I've wrestled him. In every match, he has to get the apple spit in. So you can imagine that. For me, I've had it spit into my face about 1 million times. And what always surprises me is, I don't know how, but by the time I get from the ring to the locker room, how the apple is just unexpectedly just gone. Like, and I don't know where it goes, but like it goes from being on my face to just completely gone, which is I've always found kind of interesting. Like, where does it go in that time between? I mean, I know I wiped some of it away, but most of it is gone.
He's a magician with those apples.
Yeah.
Before we get into our next segment, I had a really important question to ask you. I don't know, Drew McIntyre in the past, decade has changed tremendously from when you used to wrestle him. His physique has changed. The way he wrestles has changed. Do you think that your matches would be different now than they would have back then? Considering how powerful his moves are nowadays and how different his body just looks. Because back then in some of your early 2000s matches, he just doesn't have that bodybuilder look, that whole 9-pack basically going on.
Yeah, he filled out. And he's really kind of come into his own as far as who he is, I think. And, this is the thing about Drew. So even when I wrestled him back in the day, he was one of the most physical guys I've ever worked. But let me just say that, I mean, I love that about him, because we were good friends, and it always brought out the best in me. It was like, okay, this is how we work with each other. And I know that, you're not trying to like injure me or anything like that. This is how you work. So, I mean, I had some of the best matches of my career with Drew. I think the matches would be even better now, only because Drew has come into his own. I mean, it kind of scares me to think of how the physicality would hurt that much more, seeing that he's much bigger. Like, because again, he was already super physical back in the day. So for him to have added another 15 pounds and for him to be as physical as he was back in the day, I mean, he would probably just beat the shit out of me.
Wow. All right.
But
So
even back then, man, I've known for a while that Drew was this performer. Like, I've been one of Drew's biggest cheerleaders going back to when I had those matches with him, because I'm like, this guy is talented. Every time I wrestled him, he would come to the match with some kind of unique idea. So creatively, he's awesome. When he comes in the ring with execution, he's awesome. Like, there's a match where he worked my leg, and I can't even tell you all the little things that he did out there on the fly that helped make the story of the match that weren't even talked about beforehand. These little subtle details that were in the match that he created. I mean, the guy is there's no part of me that's surprised by Drew's success. If Drew wouldn't have been this successful, that would have been, more of a disbelief to me, because for all that time that he was even on the indies and he got released and all that, it still kind of blew my mind. It's like, what is Vince not seeing, or what is Vince soured on that he doesn't see that Drew is still the chosen one? He's still a great in-ring performer, and he can be pushed eventually to the top spot. But, everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. And, now he's filled out physically. He's grown up. He's coming to his own. So at least now he's getting this opportunity.
That's
Could he
awesome.
break the master lock right now?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm sure if they booked us to work, he would definitely be breaking the master lock for where he's at.
Go ahead, Dylan.
So our next segment is called The List, and we kind of piggyback Jericho a little bit here, where we basically trash something we don't like in the moment. So we're going to kind of go around the horn and take our turns doing it. If you feel comfortable joining in, we'd love to have, your item on the list. I'll start us off. I cannot stand the wrestling leotard that wrestlers wear. I don't know why it's still a thing. I think it's weird. I don't think it keeps up with the trending outfits and physiques and performers of today. Colt Cabana, I'm calling you out. I think you're a stand-up dude. I think you're a great in-ring performer, but I can't get past the leotard, man. And I know you're heading to the Dark Order now. Hopefully they change your outfit because I can't do it.
Is that the singlet? That's the singlet with the short
singlet.
that goes into the
Yeah,
shorts.
the Big Show thing.
Yeah, the Big Show Ryback, like that whole getup. It looks weird.
Well, the single one, with the Flintstones.
I'm not a big fan of it, but then again, I like, just like with anything, I think some guys maybe pull it off better than others. Like, I never looked at RVD's leotard like it looked bad on him. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. It fit him.
I don't mind the double one. Yeah, I don't mind the double.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, if you didn't want Colt Cabana to wear that, what would you prefer him wearing? Like long tights or shorts or what?
I think he could. I mean, they're doing this thing now where wrestlers could wear like long pants and then maybe like he probably comes out with a t-shirt or a jacket on, takes the jacket off, has the long
I like
pants.
I do like pants better with the tank top. You know what I mean? For the most part, you know what I mean. But like, I do feel like there's some wrestlers who might be able to get away with the leotard, and the only one that's coming to mind right now is RVD. I don't know about Colt Cabanas because I think Colt would actually probably look better if he did pants with that. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Going into my list item, this happens to be part of the attire thing that we're going on. What people are wearing. I do not like Chris Jericho's lame ass Negan facade.
Oh no!
For those of you who watch Walking Dead, I don't know if you do, Mr. Masters, but Negan is a great character on The Walking Dead, and Chris Jericho coming out with that baseball bat of his just kind of pisses me off. And then he just struck Orange Cassidy in the head with it, making it seem like,
it's
Negan
got a name too, just like Lucille from Walking Dead.
Yep, and I was just, I don't like it. That's me. I don't care for it. Like, if you're Chris Jericho, be Chris Jericho. Don't try to steal, a pop culture icon's, thing to do. That's me.
It's hard, with Jericho, one thing, it's hard for me to gauge Jericho because, like, Jericho has remade himself so many times, like, right? Like, and look at what it's done. Like, look how long his career has been. So, like, personally, when I look at Jericho, I don't even think about that. I've looked more at his body and kind of been like, wow, he does, he's just really not, his body doesn't look as good as it used to. You know what I mean? Let's just be frank. And I don't know if it matters. You know what I mean? Like, because I think Jericho, I struggle with this because, again, like, I feel like my perspective is jaded now because I'm in the business. So that's why when I talk to fans like you and even some of my buddies who live out here close to me, I always kind of like to get their feedback and see, like, well, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Because to me, I don't necessarily care for what Jericho's doing right now either. I don't know if the attire bothers me as much as you. I mean, but who am I to say? Because it just seems like Jericho has had such a longer duration. He's been able to remake himself so many times that it makes me kind of wonder, like, maybe I just don't get it. You know what I mean? And maybe it's just me, and maybe, like, because he's the master at this. But I definitely see what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And I see him, and I do have my questions too. I'm like, like, what is he? Even when he was wrestling in New Japan and he did the black, and you talking about painting his eyes.
Paint.
I didn't get it. I was like, what is he trying? Like, what is he doing here? This seems weird to me. But again, like, I always think, well, what do you know? You know what I mean? You haven't been able to remake yourself 20 times over and had this long of a run as he has. So, I mean, maybe wrestling fans are digging this new evolution of Jericho. But then again, maybe they're not. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's it just depends on everybody's different perspective.
Well, see, what you could do is, I saw you posted a picture of you long time ago where you had like a long hair and some highlights in it. Dude, you can do that. You can pull that stuff off, man. I say do it.
Yeah, it's good. Change the look around. Why not?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know anything about. Well, my fault. Go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead.
No, I don't know anything about Walking Dead or any of that stuff. So
what's wrong with you?
My bad. I still watch Seinfeld on the cable TV. I'll give Jericho the benefit of the doubt with that because, like you said, he's always reinvents himself. My listing would definitely be the random 6-man tag matches that WWE's been leaning on for some time here. I know that's a staple, and obviously in your time you had a lot of tag matches with Carlito and whoever. But was that something to you that you just feel like was just too often leaned upon just to fill the show, randomly taking 2 single stars that are having a feud and pairing them with some tag teams that could create a feud? If you get what I'm saying.
So we're talking specifically about 6-man tags, right?
Yes, but not 6-man tags where it's tandems of 3 and 3 where those are actual factions. It's like 2 tag teams and adding on singles.
They're always, I see what you're saying. To me, they're always kind of throw together matches, those type of matches, and they're, you know what I mean? But I will say this, from a wrestler's perspective, the best news you could ever hear, and I'm not saying this in every situation, but I'll tell you, most guys in the business, most workers, most wrestlers, when they hear that they have a 6-man tag, they are ready to rejoice because, I'll say this
because you don't have to work as hard.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. There's less responsibility on you. And to be honest, 6-man tags are fun because not only do you have 2 people on the apron, you have the 2 people on the apron are usually BSing with each other or talking shit about what's going on in the ring. So there's a lot of factors at play here. And granted, there's a lot of guys who rather have the spotlight of a single match and have a bunch of time to work with and all that. But I'm saying, if you're talking about, let's take TV out of this. If you go to a house show or a live event or an independent show and you hear that you have a 6-man tag, that's the best news you're ever going to get.
Yeah, I definitely agree there because I've gone to a few of the live events here in Orlando, and I can't recall who some of the people are, but I know it was like Kevin Owens, Orton, and this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Kevin Owens, Orton, Cena were on like one team, and then who the hell knows who the other 3 were? But they were just clowning, and they're drinking beer from the fans and pouring beer all over. They were just having the time of their life out there.
Yeah, nobody takes them as serious. And here's another thing that can't be discounted is the fact that you don't have to put yourself through as much of abuse when there's 2 other guys out there. You know what I mean? There's less responsibility on you. So, I mean, when you combine all that, less risk of injury, more people out there, a little more loose and fun, less responsibility. It usually creates this mix of, wildness and fun but when you're talking about from a television perspective, I understand what you're saying. Like from a viewer perspective, when you see one of those matches, it's usually just a throw together thing, and it's usually kind of even hard to follow a little bit. So it's not the best thing from a fan perspective, but from the wrestler's perspective, we usually love it.
And they're doing this thing now, to CL Kid's point, they're doing this thing where basically they have 2 singles fight. It gets messed up from interference, and then now they make it into a 6-man tag match.
Which is
exactly, exactly. If you wouldn't mind joining in, Chris, we'd love to hear, what's on your list today with the wrestling world. Anything at all. Doesn't have to be fashion like us jabronis. It could be anything.
Oh, anything that irks me?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we went in a whole tirade earlier about the main thing. I mean, I guess the biggest things in the business right now, at least from my perspective, is the or at least it was the intergender matches, and then the other thing was, what was it? Intergender matches, and and then there's that, Cassidy and Joey Ryan, and I'm not saying those are my 2 epics, but those are kind of 2 of the hot topics nowadays. And when it comes to, we've already kind of discussed all this, but again, with the Joey Ryans, the Orange Cassidys, the real gimmicky characters, that doesn't bug me. But the intergender matches do bug me. And I mean, that doesn't even make a lot of sense because they're both for the reasons of, oh, it's too ridiculous. You know, these things are ridiculous. You can't comprehend Brian Cage hitting a woman, and on the other side, you can't comprehend what is it? You know, the guy getting flipped by another man's penis. So, you know, for me, it still comes down to the again, the intergender. For whatever reason, the intergender thing bugs me. The gimmicky stuff doesn't, which again, I understand. It makes absolutely no sense. You know what I mean? If you have a problem with one, you should have a problem with the other. If you're for one, you should be for the other, really. So I don't know. I guess that would be my main issue, is just the intergenders. It doesn't feel like they're doing that as much. And again, I don't think that it can't be done. It can be done with certain people, you know what I mean? And you can creatively do it, but there's certain people that should never be doing them. You know what I mean? It takes away. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? I can't visually, you know, like I can't make sense of it, seeing it. And
But I think you're calling it out right, because for me as a fan, you know, wrestling, I said it earlier, it's about suspending your disbelief for, you know, seeing and believing what you're seeing. And it's no disrespect to the women. I mean, the women's division is phenomenal, which to me is even more reason why they should focus on just letting the women wrestle the women, because they're doing so great. And so I think it's more of just, you know, the Brian Cage example is like the best example. It's just pure science. It's just, it's unless like, you know, like they put like Glamazon versus Santino Marella, like that. Okay. All right. I could see that working out, you know, in a way. But otherwise, I'm fully on board with you, man. I think it's a good call.
But here's one other thing that pops to my mind is, you know, I think some of the, like when I go around the independent scene, there's like, I'm not necessarily in favor of some of the choreographed high spots to accommodate moves and stuff like that. Like I'm not necessarily so big on that. Like I do like more of a ground, like, you know, to make your match more about the high spots and less about the story. I don't necessarily like that. And I don't want to pinpoint anybody directly or anything like that, but I do think that there's a certain sense of, you know, some of these spots are too pretty and a little too choreographed, and matches should still be grounded in the fact that it's a fight and it shouldn't be so much of a dance. So I know that's kind of an old school, almost Jim Cornette kind of opinion, but, you know, like, it's just, I don't want the match to look like a dance. I don't want it to look like, you know, we're going out there doing dipsy doos and all that. Like, it should be grounded a little bit in some more of the fact that it's a fight and doesn't have to be, you know, try to mix up that pretty with some ruggedness. You know what I mean? Like, messy it up a little bit, just a little bit. You know what I mean? So, and also don't throw away moves. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the stuff that I see nowadays, and it's kind of the indie style, is, you know, to throw away one move to get to the next one. You know what I mean? You kind of, like with super kicks, you know, they're used so much, we kind of glance over the stuff, or we use it as to segue into something else. Like, I'm all about making the most out of everything you can. And, you know, there's ways to creatively work into the next thing, but I don't like throwing away moves just for the sake of let's get to the next spot, which I feel like happens a little bit.
1,000% agree
about
with
the cinematic matches, like Taker versus Styles at WrestleMania, and Bray Wyatt versus John Cena, those cinematic, those movie type matches that have been made?
I mean, I feel like, just based on what's happened in the world, first of all, when I found out that, you know, they were going to do WrestleMania without a crowd, I already knew that they were going to do this, because anybody who's been around WWE knows that, I mean, Vince McMahon's been chopping at the bit to make movies. And like, this was his chance to make cinematic kind of movie wrestling. These were like scenes out of a movie. So I'll say this, I didn't see the Undertaker and AJ Styles, which I heard was kind of more highly praised than the Cena one. I did see the Cena one, and I mean, I appreciate them trying to think outside of the box and try something different, but I felt like, as a wrestling fan, I would have felt cheated by the match, because I didn't feel like Wyatt
didn't wrestle.
Like, yeah, you didn't really get a win over Cena, because it was more just some crazy concocted kind of, you know, I don't know what it was. You know,
it was like a Nightmare on Elm Street type thing.
Yeah, it was like some crazy movie scene, and they tried to throw some nostalgia in there with the NWO stuff and all that. So, but again, as far as I don't know what it did for anybody at the end of the match, because Wyatt didn't really beat Cena because it wasn't really a wrestling match. Like, for me, still as a, and I feel like you guys might feel the same way. I want to come out of a match being able to say, like, if it was good or bad, or, you know what I mean? I want to have a take on it. And, like, I want to know who it did for. Like, if Wyatt would have had a regular match with Cena where he beat him in a ring, it would have done a lot for him, right? But, like, I feel like that match did nothing for him. It just kind of was like some cool filler where they were able to bring back Cena and kind of appeal to our nostalgic side by bringing Saturday Night Main Event, by bringing the NWO thing and all that. But again, I don't know what else they were going to do. You know what I mean? Because, again, they didn't have an audience. They wanted to try some stuff. I mean, honestly, I would have probably preferred them still to be in the ring, just for the reasons I just kind of mentioned. But I'd like to hear – I heard that the Undertaker-AJ Styles match was actually – it seemed like it was praised pretty well by most wrestling fans. I don't know if you guys have a take on that. I'd like to hear it.
It was more wrestling based than the Cena match, for sure. Cena match had almost no wrestling in it whatsoever.
No, yeah.
This was pretty much just like a movie fight scene where you replace the fighting with moves here and there. Some, it was outdoors, so it was like in a graveyard. So there was mainly more strikes than there were grapples.
It was really a lot of strikes in that
But
match. Yeah.
but I mean, and then you had some talking in between every strike and whatnot. So there was more physicality.
The music, the interludes, trying to leading up to redemption for the Undertaker. So
your Carl Anderson and Gallows were in there as well.
Yeah, so it seems like the Undertaker match was done better than at least the Cena match.
Well, for me, I think I'm probably different than the three of you guys. I'm actually a big sucker for innovation, and I mark out to movie stuff because I love movies. And I got so wrapped up. I told you earlier that I love Bray Wyatt, the Fiend stuff. So I just got so wrapped up in the psychology behind it. So I guess like part of what I love about wrestling is sometimes the psychology that goes into it. And I thought that, they built this matchup so much to be a redemption match for what Cena had done to Bray Wyatt past WrestleMania.
Right.
And so I thought it was cool. They did the NWO and, all the nostalgia stuff. The Taker Styles match was really good because it incorporates different components. I just think it's cool that WWE is trying to be innovative in a way that's different than it's a huge risk because it's their biggest show of the year. They don't have fans. It took a big risk. And I thought, it was cool to see something different. And we had matches in the night, like the triple threat ladder match with Big E and Morrison and Uso, which was a phenomenal match, like just awesome spots, great wrestling. And then we also had a couple of others that I think took care of that wrestling like feel. And then I think these two they came out of nowhere like, holy crap. I think the bonus about Taker Styles was that it was before. So I think that's why it's getting better reception because it was the first one where we saw that, then the next night happened. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe what I just saw. Like I didn't expect any of that. And then the Cena Wyatt thing happened, and it was a very like split down the middle reaction where some people were like, this is hilarious, this is awesome, I like the comedy feel to it, and the other people were like, what the hell, I wanted to see them, wrestle.
But then we get the ladder match, and look, Baron Corbin throws two men off of the corporate.
Oh, that was bad. Yeah,
basically murders two people.
Oh my God, I saw that. But they clarified it the next day and said that there was a level there. They didn't fall off the building, right?
Yeah, okay.
You know what? Here's the thing. You know what I mean? Like, we all have to be, as wrestling fans, this is an extraordinary time where we just have to be patient with all this. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's like you were saying, they're doing the best they can, and like, I don't blame. I knew that they were going to try to make these cinematic matches. I didn't know that they were going to go on pay-per-view and try to make it look like they threw some people off the building. But I mean, we're just in
Vince blew himself up in 2007 on this day, actually.
I was there. Yeah. I was there for that. Yeah, I was there that day. Wow. I remember that. Yeah, I was there that day. I remember there was something with the police. There was like a shoot police called for that or something too, I think, on that day. Like they thought something was going on actually.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But it is what it is. I kind of see what you're saying, you know what I mean? It's almost the variety show aspect of it. It's like, okay, we had some good matches, and we're in this situation anyway. Like they tried something different. And maybe it was better than having it in the ring. You know what I mean? The Undertaker AJ thing just feels like it felt a more definitive to me, the match. There's
Yeah.
something about the Cena and Bret Wyatt that just seems, it was out there, and it did play on our nostalgia, but there's just nothing felt definitive about the finish. It just seemed awkward for Cena to
It was
lose in that
anticlimactic.
fashion.
Yeah, you're right.
Just,
That's a good point.
yeah, but again, I think we can give credit to them for, they thought outside the box. They tried something, and maybe it was better than anything we would have got in the ring. What do we know?
For sure. So this our last segment, actually, we call it Know Your Role. Another nod to The Rock, and that's where we ask our guests a trivia question about their career and see how much they remember about it. So you've done a great job so far tonight, Chris, about just remembering awesome moments. So we're gonna put you on the hot seat here. In 2010 at Survivor Series, who did you eliminate in the 10-man tag match, and who eliminated you?
Oh my God, I don't remember me eliminating anybody, but I know who eliminated me.
Okay.
Patron, Alberto Del Rio.
Yeah, all right.
And the reason I remember that, just to give you an idea of what it's like out there, is I was supposed to be in that match for like 5 more minutes, but all of a sudden everybody was getting frantic, being like, we got to go. And I remember Patron telling me we need to go home. And I was just like, what do you mean? Why would I? Like I was excited to be out there. Just imagine you're excited out there, you're having a blast, and somebody telling you like, all right, you got to go. And I just was like, I wasn't ready to go, but I mean, I had no choice. I remember he took me over in his arm gimmick, and I had to tap out. But who did I eliminate? I don't remember that.
Cody Rhodes.
Did I? Oh my
Yes.
God. Wow. Wow.
It's a big one.
We stumped him.
Yeah.
Over the park.
Yeah. Wow. That's surprising. Man, I feel like I got to go back and watch that back. Like, I don't even believe it.
Well, if it's false, you can blame Ducey and Seal research skills.
Well, I mean, maybe he's still mad at me about that. I haven't gotten any calls from AEW. So
Do you? So we were debating whether we should ask you about this. I'm gonna ask you, like, is that what you would want? Would you want to AEW, or like would you rather kind of back up the Chris Masters persona and make a different gimmick run in WWE, or is there something? Or do you like the indie circuit? I mean, you're traveling all around the world. Israel, I saw that you were there too. Like, you're getting awesome travel experience. But like, yeah, do you want to go to AEW?
I mean, to say that I wouldn't be open to doing something would be ridiculous, because I've been traveling and doing the independent wrestling for like 10 years now. So, I mean, if nothing else, at least for the security of it, the financial security, and to just have a consistent job, because you got to understand, when you're doing the indie scene for 10 years, you don't know what you're going to make month to month. You know what I mean? Like, granted, I've been lucky enough that off the name I built there, I've been able to still make a decent living. I've been able to pay my bills and whatnot. But, like, you have a situation like what's happened here, and now I haven't worked for 3 months. No money coming in whatsoever. So, I mean, I look at guys like some of my friends up there, like Morrison and MVP, and I'm like, man, how awesome is that for those guys? They at least have job security. And I wish to have that. And of course, there's a huge part of me that loves pro wrestling and would love to be a relevant force in pro wrestling, and on Mondays or Wednesdays and still doing something. So, I mean, really, what I always say to this is never say never. I'm not opposed to anything like that. I've tried to I'm still doing indie wrestling, but I've tried to branch out. Like, at this point in my life, I'm trying to see if there's anything else I can do to make money in addition to wrestling. I'm not trying to give up wrestling, but I moved back to Los Angeles. I was in Toronto for 3 years just so I can start to audition and do commercial work again, or do some kind of acting work. And that way, I'm not just depending on independent wrestling to make money. You know what I mean? I can still do wrestling and then maybe do some commercial job here, or even do like broadcasting. I love doing broadcasting in terms of like politics, sports, or even wrestling. So I'm just trying to diversify my portfolio. But for me, being as much, I love wrestling like you guys love wrestling. I've always loved it. So, I mean, if I would love to have an opportunity with one of those again. Sure. If that's what is meant to be. But the big thing with me is I've been on this stick for the longest time where like I'm not going for that. Like I'm not trying to get a job back with WWE. I'm not trying to necessarily get a job with AEW. If the opportunity arises, cool, I'll love it. But I'm trying to see if I can make money doing something else in addition to wrestling at this point. Something where I maybe don't have to beat myself up all the time. You know what I mean? Because I mean, I'm 37 now. You know what I mean? So, you know, I could probably stretch another 10 more years out of this. Like I look at MVP. I mean, hopefully he won't get mad about me saying, but I mean, he's 46 years old now. And like, look at him. You know what I mean? He's getting a whole nother run. So, I mean, you can't help but look at stuff like that and be like, oh, man, I'm 37. So you never know. I mean, I could have another run this year. I could have another run freaking 7 years from now if it was based on kind of, you know, that whole situation. But I don't want to be somebody who's depending on WWE calling me again or AEW or anything like that. And I've also seen how that kind of works. You know what I mean? You could be there. You could be a lifer there, or you could be there for 2, 3, 4 years. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily for everybody for the long term.
Don't worry, awesome. I'll beat you up someday.
Well, I hope the acting thing works out. That's awesome, man. I hope like that catches some steam, or even the broadcasting gig. You got a great voice, so I think you could do that.
Thanks. Just about, you know, I've always said this. It's about trying to create multiple revenue streams. You know what I mean? Like independent wrestling, for the most part, has always been there, and will probably continue to be there in some form or fashion. But like, what can I do in addition to that? You know, I'm not trying to quit wrestling. I'm just like, I got most of these weeks, I'm either working on a Friday or a Saturday, and I have the rest of the week off. So, I mean, really what it comes down to is just managing my time better and being productive Monday through Thursday and doing something else.
Yeah, it was funny you said that. Me and the villain here, we actually wrote a show, sitcom, whatever you want to call it, and pitched it to like ABC, and we're waiting for that whole thing to happen. And we have a character. It's about a neighborhood and some other things there. We have a character that lives in the neighborhood that's going to be a wrestler that is always in persona, you know, doesn't break kayfabe or whatever you want to call it. So, you know, if that ever gets picked up, you'll be the guy. You'll have to jump back from heel to face, and every time you answer the door, or every time you show up, you never know whether you're going to be a heel or a face. You're always developing your character. So
Netflix wouldn't even pick that shit up.
Oh, you know, man. With those type of things, you got to be hopeful, but you can never hold your breath. And like, that's one thing I learned from wrestling too, is like with wrestling, one thing you learn really quick is you can't anticipate, even if they tell you something's going to happen, you can't anticipate it actually happening until it happens, because things change at the drop of a hat. Like things change all the time. So all you're doing is setting yourself up for a lot of heartbreak, you know, a lot of sadness when you just, you know, when you anticipate like, oh, I was told this is going to happen, or you feel like this is going to happen, because, you know, you just never know until it actually happens. And, you know, you just can't hold your breath on anything like that, but you got to still remain hopeful.
That's awesome. Sure. That's all. Thanks, Chris. And, you know, thanks for joining us on Pod Jobbers here. Is there anything else you want to say out there to the fans, or, you know, where can we see you on social media?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. It was good to have a spirited conversation with wrestling fans. I will say again, this quarantine has really kind of brought me back to a place where I never thought I'd see again, where I'm like, you know, I'm a wrestling fan again, I guess. You know, I guess I just have to admit that. And I just appreciate coming on with you guys. If anybody wants to follow what I'm doing, you can follow me on Twitter I think it's at Chris Adonis. Just look up Chris Masters and you'll still find it. I think my handle is Chris Adonis. And then on Instagram, it's Chris Masters 310. Hello back there.
That's my wife.
Jess.
Who is that?
Yes, that's the right.
Oh, okay.
He says hi.
But yeah, no, it was just great to be on with you guys. And those are my social medias if anybody wants to follow me. And hopefully I will be reunited with the mainstream wrestling fans again at some point, where I'm on a television program where they can see me.
For sure. Hopefully.
Thank you. Okay, so now what we do here is we're done being live, so we just like to have a little bit of small talk to just I know that we've kept you on for so long and we apologize for that, but you've had so much intel and
It's awesome.
we can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, no
Yeah.
problem. No problem.
So what we do is we're just going to go through a little small talk, actually just random questions, just like imagine like you're one of our buddies, that's just what it is.
Okay.
We're not going to dive into deep stuff, but one question I asked Carlito last week, or the last time he was on, and I hope that you have a better response. What's your
I'm gonna boil some water, but go ahead.
Okay, no problem. I'll wait for you to return.
Oh, I can hear you. I got
okay. I just want to know, what is your favorite superhero movie?
Ooh, oh my God, this is a huge genre for me that I love too.
Nice.
So really. Okay. So let me start. Okay, first of all, let me just say this. I hate what DC has done. DC has fucking ruined their whole deal. Like I didn't even go to see Aquaman because I felt like they did such a bad job with Batman versus Superman. But I will say this, the Dark Knight movies were they were the top. Like the Dark Knight movies were by far the best. I think Marvel has done a good job too. Like I wouldn't put Marvel over the Dark Knight movies, but I mean, you can't argue with the way Marvel brought together. Like Marvel did the Avengers right. You know what I mean? DC did the Justice League terribly.
Awful.
They rushed it. Like Marvel did such a good job about slowly bringing all of that together and like culminating it in Endgame. So I love all the Marvel movies for the most part. Like, so I think I would say the Dark Knight movies, and I'm trying to think, should I specify on which Marvel movies or?
No, okay. Out of the Dark Knight trilogy, you have to specify which one though.
This is just because the Joker would have to be the second one, the Dark Knight.
God.
But I mean, so here's the thing though.
Ducey, what's it gonna take to convince you? How many guesses is it gonna take to convince you that Chris Nolan is just a genius?
Which movie? Why? What is it? What's your opinion, King?
Okay.
What are you so passionate about?
First of all, I got Marvel tattoos all over me, man. I mean, I'm a big Marvel guy. I've got.
Oh, I know. I love it.
And in my opinion, I think you would have made a better Drax than Dave Bautista. But
no, he's done great. How funny is he, man? You can't.
He's
been so good.
He does a good job. Yeah. But I think the last two Avengers movie, the Infinity War and Endgame, brought us everything we needed for the culmination of all those 23 movies. And you get those fight scenes, and when Cap finally picked up Mjolnir and had that in his hand, I mean, my son had goosebumps. I had goosebumps.
It felt like pro wrestling. It felt like a main event of pro wrestling.
The big spot.
The big spot.
Yeah, the big spot, the big moment. No, I get it, man. Like, bro, I was obsessed, and I'm still obsessed. It's kind of funny where we're at now because we have no superhero movies now because we had that big blow off. And I know we had Spider-Man, but, it's hard. I'm hoping that we get to a point where we're excited for the movies again like we were for Endgame and Infinity War because it feels so far out because I feel like they've done so much with those that, you know what I mean? We had this big blow off, and it's like we're starting all over again almost. You know what I mean? Like Iron Man's dead and
Cap is old, and so
like I don't know what this is what I was here. Actually, this is a good thought on this. You know what will create excitement around Marvel again is you got to do an incorporation now of the X-Men slowly into now the Marvel universe.
Yes.
And then you'll have some of those wrestling moments like we were just talking about. Like, can you imagine the first time Wolverine pops up in like the Marvel universe? Like the pop, I'm getting goosebumps right now just talking about that, right?
My nips are hard, dude. Seriously.
Seriously. Yeah. Like they can create some of the biggest, like we can recreate the excitement around Marvel by just throwing Wolverine in there and some X-Men characters, but do it right, do it just like they just did it.
Gotta write it right. Yes.
Yeah, do it slowly, and then maybe you build to some. I don't know the actual comics like you might, but like hopefully there's some kind of moment or story they can build off of where you can build like the Avengers and the X-Men or some kind of blow off that builds to that, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, like with the Hulk and him, because they're talking about doing a Hulk movie by himself. If
Yeah.
they go back and do a past movie with the Hulk, bring in Wolverine for his first appearance, like they did in the comics,
Yeah.
you're good from there. Then you can have your
Oh, yeah.
Avengers versus X-Men movie.
Man,
I don't think you can top Dark Knight.
Dark
What
Knight is
Chris
so
Nolan
good.
did for the industry is just insane. I mean, he
Painful.
made 3 movies that were just so realistic, like as realistic as you could get for a comic book movie, and the acting, the storyline, the cinematography.
It's hard for me to even compare them, honestly, because I mean, I'm with you. Like, I think that Dark Knight is the pinnacle of movies, but then again, what Marvel did is so different, right? It wasn't over
True.
3 movies, it was over like 20 movies, and then it had this epic, like what they did. It just, I almost put them like right next to each other. They're just so different, though. You know what I mean? Like Dark Knight was a little more grounded and dark, and Marvel was a little more extreme. But they built to that extreme. You know what I mean? Like they gradually built us to the point where we could believe that Thanos, who was not even a real physical guy, right? Like we actually bought into that towards the end. Like he was a real guy. Like I don't know. It's just I'm with you. I'm very passionate on this, just like all you guys,
Hey man, maybe I should change my name to Chris or something because I said that exact same epilogue you just went on, and Doozy shook his head and hated me, and it was pretty much word for word what you said. Like
Yeah.
Dark Knight, all that stuff.
King, your argument is the Marvel movies are better than the Dark Knight, right?
All
of them? You can't say all of them.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Okay, number one, I do not like Captain Marvel movie. I did not like it. The Ant-Man was all about comedy. Paul Rudd. Thor was fucking all. Shut up.
Thor was god awful.
Hold on. What's your favorite? How would you rank the Marvel movies then? Like, just give me your top 3 or something.
Oh, top 3. Hang on. My wife brought me a little something that I have here.
Oh my God.
Oh wow.
I'm this type of guy that buys this stuff.
Yeah.
But no, top 3. It's got to be Iron Man #1 because that started everything.
Yeah.
And then I go Infinity War and Endgame. But the only reason is because we all look to the Dark Knight as something that started something, but it wasn't. Christopher Nolan did a great job. Heath Ledger blew it out of the water with Joker. But we couldn't. But because he
Christian Bale
died the way he did, we didn't get anything else from it. And it's depressing.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
That's why it's in itself. It's in a league of its own. But that's just where I stand, and I feel bad when these guys cling on to that movie like that's the greatest of all time. They gotta realize it's not.
It is. What do you want?
The Dark Knight is the best movie that's ever been created.
Doozy, do you want a
Matrix is close.
Do you want a second Undertaker Mankind Hell in a Cell match?
Dude, go ahead. Somebody ask him something else. Let's move on. Jake, you had something for him, I believe.
So I was going to ask you, I kind of asked it earlier. It's just seeing, I didn't realize how much you've been traveling until I was doing research. And so I'm just curious, like, where's your favorite place that you've been able to travel to?
Favorite place, a couple places that stand out. Like I was, when this whole pandemic broke out, I was scheduled to go to Australia, which is probably one of my favorite places. And I hadn't been there in about 5 years. So I was really bummed out about that, man. That was in March. So Australia is probably one of my favorite places. And then I'm not going to say all of Europe. I'm going to say certain parts of Europe. Like I love going to Amsterdam. I love going to Spain. I love going to Germany. And I would like to say I like going to the UK too, although like the only thing about the UK is the weather is shitty and the food is shitty. But the people there.
Yes, I agree.
but the fans are awesome. They're very passionate fans. They chant the whole time. We were talking about how fans are part of the match. The UK, it's no more clear than the UK with that. So, and I will say this, when you go out in the UK, all the women are really wild, and I like that part of it. So,
does it?
Yeah, they're not the best looking women, but they're at least fun.
Can't hate that.
Kid?
I get. We already kind of talked about sports things. I know you're a big LA guy. I assumed you watched the Jordan documentary. I don't know if you had the time for that.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So are you, being that LeBron is a Laker, are you Jordan or LeBron?
I still think Jordan's the GOAT. You know what I mean?
Good.
But I'm a LeBron fan now because he is a Laker. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I almost have to back him. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things where like,
Yep.
because my guy was always Kobe. But again, I'm a Laker fan before any individual person. You know what I mean? I go back to the Magic Johnson days. So like, if Kobe wasn't a Laker, I would have probably never really been a Kobe fan. And you know, but like now since he has been a Laker for 20 years, he's like my ultimate hero. Like for me, my two favorite athletes, Shawn Michaels, Kobe Bryant. Like those two guys, I idolize those two guys. You know what I mean? And that's just never going to change. And LeBron, you know, LeBron, quite frankly, I'm just happy he's a Laker. Like I'm glad he picked us. I recognize him for being he's a freak. But I don't feel like he's ever going to be on par with Kobe or Jordan as far as like their actual skills, you know? LeBron's just the physical superhuman. So like he doesn't even need to be as skilled as Jordan or Kobe because he's big and athletic more so than even they were.
Correct.
I don't think you can. I think you can compare him to Kobe. I don't think you can compare LeBron to
I don't think
Jordan.
you
I think it's
compare him to
two
Kobe
different.
either. If you look
No,
at
I think you can because I think that the talent level in Kobe's era is probably close to LeBron's talent. That's my argument for LeBron versus Jordan because Jordan played in an era where he was on a different level, and the other talent that existed, in my opinion, wasn't nearly as impressive as him or that Bulls team. And where LeBron is playing in a time where you have super teams, you have people at the top of their talent. They've been recruited since they've been 5 years old. It's a whole different ball game than it
but
was.
the super teams you're talking about are LeBron's team. LeBron is one of the super teams.
And he's won.
Okay, but he had to win with the super team. When he didn't have a super team, he didn't win.
But he literally, it was him by himself, and he
No,
went to the
Ladies,
finals. That's
calm
insane. He
down.
beat that Pistons team by himself.
Okay, but it was him with players that fit his roster. So, like, obviously, us in Orlando.
Sideshow Bob?
Hold on. We had Dwight Howard here in Orlando, right? So,
oh, come on.
Nobody wanted
Dwight
Rashard
Howard.
Lewis. Nobody wanted Rashard Lewis. Nobody wanted Hito Turkoglu. Nobody wanted Jameer Nelson. And everyone talked shit about them all the time. All those guys around Dwight Howard were the right fit because they created spacing. They started the whole stretch four thing, right? That changed the whole game, and nobody gives Orlando credit for that. But that created that and got them to the finals. Whereas with LeBron, what did he want? He wanted guys who stood in the corner, didn't clog the lane, and could shoot. That's why he had guys like Sasha Pavlovic that played 3-and-D, Mo Williams who could create at the last second of the shot clock and shoot, Delonte West who could play defense, do the same thing. Like everyone says he had nobody, but he had players that fit his skill set. If he had another ball hand, if he had Kobe on his team, the team might have been just as good because now LeBron has to be designated to a stand around waiting for Kobe to get him the ball. And LeBron can't isolate the way Kobe can isolate. So
yeah, I was going to say that as a Laker fan, one thing I miss when I watch LeBron, one thing I do miss is I do miss the fact that LeBron doesn't necessarily, it doesn't feel like LeBron has, and I know this is talked about like by Skip Bayless and everybody tirelessly, but it doesn't feel like he takes things super personal and has that killer instinct at the end of the game. Like, and I do kind of miss that because, you know, I was watching a Kobe game. I do a Lakers Nation podcast, and we were watching a Kobe game back from like 2010 or something like that. And you would just see these moments in the game where things would get tight, and all of a sudden Kobe would have that scowl on his face. And you just had this confidence in you watching it, knowing like, oh boy, like Kobe, even if he has to do this himself, he's going to do everything he can not to lose this game. And like, so when you watch LeBron, sometimes it can get frustrating when you see those moments and you see rather than LeBron taking that approach, he's dishing it to whoever, you know, said person in the corner is, or he's making the right basketball play, but you almost don't want him to do that. You want him to take it, all the responsibility on his shoulders, and you want to win or die by the best player in the world. And, you know, you just don't get that from him. And
Kobe was super clutch. I'll give you that. He was in the postseason. It was unreal.
Look at that Lakers Suns game, that Lakers Suns series, you know, with the turn fade at the buzzer where he does the jersey pull and wins the game. Like play after play after play. There was no like, who's the other? It's Kobe every time. Give me the ball from inbounds all the way on the other side. Kobe's going to do it. Get out the damn way. Whereas LeBron's always, you know, I'm just going to Look
No,
for the other
what?
guy.
No.
Anyway,
Watch the Magic series, and you'll see him take over
The
plenty
Magic
of times.
series, he
Watch
lost
the
the
Heat
Magic
finals.
series.
You'll see him take over plenty of
Okay,
times.
no. The Magic series, he lost the Magic series, and 3 of those games, they were up by like 20 points, and they let the lead blow for the Magic to come back.
He also
He
hit
does-
that 3 from half court.
Okay, no, not from half court. It was a turn fade.
Your boy,
over
Mr. Masters.
Off the left
does-
side, the easiest turn fade.
Regardless,
and he didn't believe
I
his mind.
highly doubt he said,
believe his
Dante
He,
West.
he shot it, and he
I highly
turned around
doubt
in
that
so much disbelief, and they got eliminated. And they lost.
Normally,
I will
Mr. Masters, we're not like this. I apologize for those two. We usually have another person with us. He's going through some hard times right now. So his name is Beautiful Brett, and so something that he would probably want to ask you is, which side would you take in Ohio State versus Michigan?
Oh man, you know what? I'm the wrong person to ask about that because I don't follow it all. But I mean,
But it's the game, Mr. Masters. It's the game of the
Nobody
year.
cares.
Everybody watches it.
is
Lame.
this
The game.
is this college football?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I would probably lean towards Michigan, honestly.
The shit!
Sorry. That's only because I have a bunch of family in Michigan, and I'm going to Michigan next week. So
Oh,
just
nice.
keep that in mind.
Nice.
Nice. Nobody cares about that game. They're not missing anything. Don't worry about it.
Anything else, you guys?
No, I'm good.
I
That
think
was
I
great.
think we kept him long enough. Poor guy. He's been here
Mr.
for-
Masters, thank you so much,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
doing
no
this.
problem.
You and Carlito in one show at the same time. I think that would be so much fun for you guys and for us
Oh
especially.
yeah. Yeah. Would definitely. That'd be fun. I'm sure we can have that set up at some point.
That's awesome.
You know, and we might be able to even, again, Carly and me are on a lot of indie shows together. Usually, like I see them a bunch of times every year, so we might be able to sync it up where Carly and me are actually even together at some point. Not that we need to do that. Granted, we have technology now in Zoom, so it doesn't really matter. But it just might be easy when we're both in the same place to be like, hey, let's do it after this wrestling show we're working in, wherever the fuck it is,
Right.
We're good. You guys were good. I mean, I wish you guys continued success. Hopefully you'll gather some more traction through doing these interviews with me and Carly and then whoever else that we get you guys to do. But you guys were good because you kind of kept it like you kept it kind of like a bro session. You know what I mean? Like I would even do, when you're doing the wrestling shows, we do some of that sports talk in there too. You know what I mean? Just so it's like, you know what I mean? That way you break the ice with guys and then, we're not, we're going to talk about wrestling like 80% of the time anyway. So just to splash in some other pop culture shit like the LeBron talking and all that, it just, it gets it to seem like we're less doing an interview and we're more just talking like a brother session. Like, let's all fucking talk some shit about basketball, movies, wrestling. We'll keep it geared towards wrestling, but hey, are you a DC or Marvel guy? And then we get into that a little bit. Like, that was fun. You know what I mean? Because I'm passionate about that shit too, man. Like, those are all the things I'm passionate about. Wrestling, fucking comic movies, and fucking basketball. You know what I mean? That's it.
All right, sir. Well, you're more than welcome to sign off whenever you want, man. We've been blessed tonight. Thank you.
Thanks again.
All right,
man.
cool.
Appreciate it, dude.
No problem. I'll talk to you.